What's your take, if again, as being an emerging franchisor, on how early do I start a franchise advisory council and, using that to help, spread the goodwill and, hearing the voice of all the constituents?
Yeah, I'd say I'm not sure the exact number of franchisees, but I would say this: the sooner the better. When I first started mine back at Jackson Hewitt, I was advised by others, some franchisors, you're just creating a renegade possibility. Well, I like to keep what the Godfather said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I want to hear it. And most franchisors, because they don't believe in happy, successful franchisees, don't want to hear the advice from the franchisees. I crave that advice. And the easiest way to improve is when you're getting criticism. If no one ever criticizes you, how do you improve?
That's true.
And the beauty, one of the beauties of franchising is even when you're right, you're criticized. You can't do anything that everyone agrees to. I love telling this story that when I had 2,000 franchisees and I peaked at Jackson Hewitt, let's say I said to all of them, I'm going to give each of you $10,000. Well, you would think that they'd all be happy. But what have happened is, so you had some franchises that were paying $1 million worth of royalty and some that were paying the minimum of $5,000, the minimum first year royalty of $5,000. So the guy that's paying millions says, well, if you're paying that guy that's only paying 5,000, 10,000, I should get 500,000.
Right.
And then the guy that's only paying 5,000, he's a loser, he's failing. He says that guy's making $2 million a year profit. He doesn't need the 10,000. Give me 30,000. You cannot make everyone happy. And my favorite Shakespeare is, to thine own self be true. So you have to always do what's right and always listen. I love the fact that I get criticism, because if both of us think alike, one of us is useless.
Right. True. I heard this great quote that criticism is the tax that you pay for being successful.
And in the United States, it's litigation is a tax you pay for being successful.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm the one of the most criticized people on the planet. With 2,000 franchisees,
you have to have tough skin, right? You have to have thick skin.
You have to understand. You have to feel good about continuing to do the right thing.
Yeah. What's life like as a franchisor when you have 2,000 franchisees? I know, again, people don't listen, but aside from that, in making the machine really work.
It's good in so many ways, because whenever I travel, and I travel even more now than I used to. I mean, even now that I've left Jackson Hewitt, left Block, left Liberty, whenever I travel in the country, I meet up with my former franchisees. And those 5,200 franchisees had hundreds of thousands of employees. So tomorrow when I go to Miami, I'll be meeting with ex-franchisees and potential franchisees and employees of those. It's just, there's so much gratefulness in this country for what I've done. But the key to that growth, one part of it is that you have to learn, I call it the tip of the iceberg theory, that when something happens, right, then, for example, one time we got a complaint where franchisee got a call on April 15th. The TV station was coming to his office, and he was the worst franchise in the country. And he called up and he couldn't get help quickly. So I realized that even though he was the worst franchisee in the country, he had a good point that we need to, in training, we need to talk about what happens when you're on an interview. We need to have part of the operating manual, because in our business, in tax, every TV station, radio station, newspaper is going to write something about taxes during the tax season. I mean, you're bound to be called. So we should have a system set up to do that. Now, if someone had said, so we created a system for that, and it became part of our basic training, part of our advanced training, part of our, you could go find it in the operating manual of what to do. But if someone called up and said, oh, they're sending anthrax into our office, what do we do, right? You have to, you don't need a system for that, right? So you have to understand, when you get a problem, you always have to think about that problem. Is that something that's going to occur hundreds of more times? Then we need to invent a system so that we can replicate that answer very easily. We can't do one-off. If we're getting 100 TV stations and radio and newspaper reporters that want to come to our offices, we don't want to have 100 different conversations. We want to have a system for doing that. So I call it my tip of the iceberg theory, that you have to watch for that as you grow your business. And your system needs to encompass all the things that might happen on a regular basis.
That makes total sense. And I'm sure you've taken all the years of all that experience and things that people wouldn't think about, like training my franchisees for media interviews. You have to integrate all of that. How, or I should say, when did you start Loyalty Brands? And I want to kind of get into how you created this, portfolio of companies.
Yeah. When I left Liberty, one of my largest franchisees said to me, or two of them, I had breakfast with them, and they invented the word loyalty. They said, you know what, we were having a civil war at Liberty, a problem year internally. And they said, you need to start a brand that called loyalty to people that are loyal to John Hewitt. And so I added brands to it because, when you think about it, brand loyalty is a huge thing, right?
Sure.
So I changed it to Loyalty Brands to take advantage of brand loyalty. But actually, many of the best ideas come from franchisees. Mm-hmm. So it was two of my franchisees at breakfast here in Virginia Beach invented the name Loyalty. Wow. I added the brands to it.
And what year was that you started Loyalty?
It was 2018.
Okay, so 2018. Would you mind sharing what your criteria was back in 2018 when you said, I'm going to create this portfolio of brands? What were you looking for?
What I thought is, I'm going to take emerging brands, and our first relationship was with an emerging brand who have a good idea, but they're not growing rapidly enough. And I said, there are at least 50 or 60 organizations, mostly private equity around the country, that are developing groups of franchisors. And I said, I can bring a couple things to the table that no one else can. None of these groups are providing mentoring for the franchisees. The reason we call it loyalty, I have one person been with me 53 years, three that have been with me 35, 330, 25, 25. I have an immense amount of experience in my organization. So we can mentor these CEOs and founders. Then I said, we can help them sell. I brought in 5,200 franchisees. Now, I'm sure someone else in the history of franchising must have done that. I've never met them, but almost no one's done that. And so I know how to bring in new franchisees. And in addition to that, out of my 5,200 franchisees and hundreds of thousands of employees, some of them are going to want to join us. They're going to want to join us as a franchisor or employee or customer. So whenever I go somewhere in the country, and then where are you located? In
Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, when I go to Tampa, I was just there a couple of months ago. I have ex-franchisees and ex-employees, and some of them are joining me. So I said, I can bring these things that no one else can. And so our umbrella of franchisors will be more powerful, faster growing than these other groups are.
What were you looking for specifically in the founders that you invested in?
Certainly, number one, they had to have integrity. Number two, they have to have a working model. And the model has to be replicable, right? And it can't be, and I'm very much against models that require advanced degrees. Like you got to be an attorney, or you got to be a dentist, or you got to be a doctor. When you think about all the franchisees I brought in, a lot of them are average. Some don't have a high school, more than a high school education. Some got a GED. Half of them don't have college. And so you have to have a system that's replicable by kind of an above average, not average, but above average American. So it has to be replicable. And then finally, it has to be sticky, because as you get through the franchise journey, your franchisee kind of love-hate relationship. They love the money they're making. They hate having to give you part of it. And so you have to have something that keeps them at the end of the day, so they don't all go out and compete with you, and then you have nothing. So it has to have all of those characteristics.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.